Dorothy Byrne also spoke again yesterday at the McTaggart Legacy session and sort of repeated her quote that Boris Johnson is a born liar, and she defended that. That was one of many events, I think, that perhaps started a Tory grudge against Channel 4. Would you agree, and do you think that's why they are pushing for privatisation?
Look, I've always been very sceptical about that kind of analysis. I mean, any change to the whole PSB ecosystem is a really profound thing to do to the wider culture, to the economy of television. And I just don't believe that a government does that kind of thing because they don't like something that someone said on a platform in Edinburgh.
Okay. Generally speaking about privatisation, what does the future hold for Channel 4? Are there any positives that could come from it?
Well, I mean, look, what does the future hold? I mean, I covered politics for a long time. I learned that it's an utter fool's game to try and predict what politicians will do, so I won't. But we set out our stall incredibly clearly, and more importantly, so did the entire industry. I think the whole industry made it absolutely clear that the contribution that a publicly owned Channel 4 can make to the wider creative economy, to levelling up, that the kind of shows that it delivers that other broadcaster streamers don't, that contribution is best protected by staying in public hands. I think that was very clear from the debate. And we know that 96% of people who answered the consultation said the same. So I think, and we're in the rudest health probably that we've ever been in. First time we broke £1 billion in revenue last year, £100 million surplus. So I think we now just have to wait and see what an incoming government decides to do. I mean, in terms of positives, look, I wouldn't say this debate has been fun, but there has been something quite energizing, I think, certainly for me and I think for my colleagues, about having to really go back to basics and explain what you're for and focus on what you're for. And I think it's given us a really laser focus on the remit and delivery of the remit. And I think if you look back at that little highlights reel, if you look at the kind of shows we're announcing we have announced here and are talking about for the next 6 months, I think we are more focused on delivery of the remit as a result of this. I think that's really healthy.
We're going to take a look at some of the new shows that you've announced that you've got coming up. But before we do, a slightly lighter topic, but no less interesting, something, again, that everybody seems to be talking about at this festival, or everyone I bump into anyway, is Big Brother, bought by ITV. Do you have any regrets about letting it go? Was there ever a conversation about taking it back? How do you feel about that moving to ITV?
Well, look, it's a wonderful, wonderful show. It did wonderful things for Channel 4 for 10 years, for a decade. It did a great job for Channel 5 for 7 years. In fact, they only just stopped it 3-4 years ago. I'm sure it will bring an audience to ITV. But I do think there's something depressing about this microwave moment that we're in television, with so many old dishes being reheated. And hands up, we do some too, right? And we've got changing rooms on air at the moment. But I think if Channel 4 is about anything, it has to be about looking for that new dish, looking for the new recipe. And that's what we need to keep our focus on. And that's why I'm so proud that this week we've announced a bunch of new shows, including 2 really big reality shows, Rise and Fall and Alone, very, very different shows. But both of which are really big bets on big, difficult ideas.
You've announced also a documentary about extra-large penises, and that's the second time I've said that word in this room in 2 days, which is odd, but there we go. And a musical about Prince Andrew, which you were very kind enough to show a clip of the other night, and I have to say it does look extremely good. But is this just you being very sort of Channel 4? Is it sort of showing off a bit? I mean, are these things actually any good? Are you choosing things because they're the best that they are? Or because
you saw a bit of that Andrew music. Yeah, I'm sure you wouldn't say that was showing off. I mean, no, look, I think, I mean, just speaking to the shows you're talking about are part of this season that we have coming at the end of this year to mark. We only ever say 4 decades of Channel 4, not our 40th birthday, because we can't face the fact that we're actually 40. But the season is really about underlining that spirit of disruptiveness, of mischief. And you know, I feel that if we've done anything in the last 5 years, what we've really done is put the spikiness back in the channel. I would say we've put the grit back in the oyster. And if you look at shows like, you know, the Prince Andrew the musical, or Frankie Boyle on the Monarchy coming up later this year, if you look at Joe Lycett's amazing live 50th anniversary of Pride show, possibly the rudest 90 minutes of television ever, or his Shell versus the Oil Giant earlier this year, or indeed the Kyle doc, I think there is a thread of real deep Channel 4 DNA, awkwardness and spikiness that is running through the channel. I'm really proud of that.
We've got a clip of one of your new shows. Would you like to introduce it? Make Me a PM.
Yeah, and I think this speaks a bit to the conversation we were just having about Big Brother, and this is another really big bet we're taking. I think all the best Channel 4 shows watch as great entertainment shows, but have something really interesting and piquant to say about the country and where it is now. This is a show about people who reckon they can do a better job of being the Prime Minister than professional politicians, which I think is probably most of the country right now. And when we commissioned it, we had no idea there'd be an actual vacancy, so it's not like we were prescient or anything, but it does feel remarkably timely right now. I think it really speaks to that sort of widespread sense of disaffection with professional politics. We've got 12 people in the show who think that they've got what it takes to be Prime Minister. They are put through their paces by Alistair Campbell and Saeed Owasi. If you look carefully, you will see one lockdown celebrity who is also making a bid for more power.
Superb. Let's take a look.
I should just clarify that neither Tony Blair nor David Cameron are competing in that show.
I feel so happy that Jackie Weaver's getting a happy ending. It's just delightful. Moving on to sort of factual, I suppose, you mentioned the Jeremy Kyle documentary earlier. You have had a couple of quite punchy documentaries as well, because you had the Caroline Flack one as well, and you've got There's Something About Miriam coming up as well. So I suppose I want to talk to you a little bit about duty of care. You obviously have some strong opinions in that area. Do you feel that some of your rivals perhaps are not learning the lessons? There has been more talk about misogyny in Love Island this year, for example. Are they not learning their lessons? Is that why you're commissioning these documentaries?
No, that's not what I think. I think that, you know, what those shows tell us is how incredibly far the debate about duty of care and our considerations around duty of care have moved in a few years. I'm just, you know, the Carr documentary was devastating about what was happening 3-4 years ago. I think there's, there was an interesting session yesterday that I was involved in on mental health in the industry. I think what's happened is, as an industry, we've really woken up to duty of care in these shows like the big reality shows where you have contributors who are put into quite extreme positions. And we've woken up to duty of care where we're putting production teams in quite extreme positions because we're sending them to places like Ukraine, or we're exposing them to really difficult material. But what the Looking Glass research reveals is that we have a widespread mental health crisis in the industry. I mean, I'm sure you've all seen the numbers. They are terrifying. The mental health of our industry is much, much, much worse than the wider population. And so I think what needs to happen next is that this duty of care conversation needs to move out of contributors in reality shows, people in extreme productions, to the whole of the industry. And that's why I think the whole picture toolkit and the work the film and TV charity are doing is so absolutely critical, and why we're really trying to support that.